It shouldn't surprise you that 2020 candidate Bernie Sanders has the most individual donations and individual donors out of anybody in the race. And if that does surprise you, then cable news isn't doing their job, because he has led in that stat since the beginning of the race. Bernie has always had the most individual donors by far out of anyone in the race since he launched his campaign. So again, if you didn't know that already, then whatever source you're getting your news from, likely cable news, isn't giving you the full story. But what may surprise you is that in addition to him having the most individual donors by far, the most donations by far, not taking any super PAC money, not taking any corporate money, not even holding private fundraisers, in addition to all of that, what may surprise you is that Bernie also has the most military contributions. So the most donations from people in the military. So as conservative pollster Frank Luntz tweets out, military members have donated more to Bernie Sanders' campaign than to Trump, Biden, and Buttigieg combined. Now, we'll get to the exact numbers in a minute here, but I find some of the replies to this tweet hilarious. I'll link to the tweet below so you can go through them yourself. But many of the replies are treating this as a polling stat, when this is official FEC data. This isn't like a random sampling of polling. This is actual data, government data, showing who has the most individuals, or the most donations from individuals in the military. But I just want to show you a couple funny replies here. So this guy tweets out, "Frank, you're at it again. Another repeat of 2016 lies, or he's just bad at math." And then this one from Mark. "This poll was taken by a George Soros funded organization. Frank poll disqualified." Okay, again, George Soros has nothing to do with this. This is, again, official FEC data. That's where this is coming from. But let's go over some of the details here. So as foreignpolicy.com report shows, Bernie's on top with just over $181,000 in military contributions. And that's more than double Pete Buttigieg, who is a military veteran, and almost triple what Donald Trump has received, even though Trump pretends that he is the guy that the troops love. Now, the blurb here on foreignpolicy.com is also pretty funny, as clearly they have no idea how popular Bernie Sanders is. So check this out. "Despite the presence of two veterans and an incumbent president in the race, no candidate has raised as much as Sanders in military contributions. Quote, I would never have guessed that. Sanders would have been way down my list of possible answers if this were a final Jeopardy question," Larry Sabato, the director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics, wrote in an email. Quote, "He's mainly about economic equality and Medicare for all." A Sanders campaign aide pointed to the senator's promises to end the endless wars and the many years he has spent on the Veterans Affairs Committee as reasons for his popularity with military employees. Quote, "It shouldn't be a surprise that these things draw support from so many in the military, but Bernie is extremely proud to have it," the aide said. That's right. This shouldn't be a surprise. But the reason this is a surprise for many people is because the way most people consume their news, I shouldn't say most, but many people, especially people that tend to vote, consume their news is through cable news. And cable news barely covers Bernie Sanders. And even apart from Bernie Sanders, cable news barely covers the money race. So this is something I touched on in another recent video. But think about it. If you watch cable news, they used to talk all the time about the money race. Oh, who's raising the most money? And that was at a time when most of the money was raised from, corporate PACs or corporate interests, wealthy donors. And there was always this discussion about, oh, who's fundraising where and how are they getting the money? And now that Bernie Sanders is lapping all of them with just individual donors, no private fundraisers, no corporate PACs, no corporate-backed money, just individual donors, mostly small individual donors, averaging, I believe, last they said, $16 a piece. Their cable news has no desire to report on this now because Bernie's message is antithetical to corporate interests. So if they report on the fact that the most popular candidate in the race by far with individuals in the country is the guy that wants to raise taxes on massive corporations and on billionaires and wants to give people health care and cancel student debt. Well, all of a sudden, if they start to represent that guy more often, then their message gets a little more cloudy. And they begin to, in essence, prop up a candidate that is incredibly popular and on a message that is anti-corporate, anti to their interests as corporate media. So this is why it's important to get your news from everywhere. Look, I still pay attention to cable news occasionally. I'll, of course, read the New York Times, the Washington Post. It all depends on who's writing the story, what the story is. Like, all that matters. So it's still important to get your news from everywhere, but it is important to get your news from everywhere. If you're somebody or you know people in your family who only get their news from cable news, they're not getting the full story because they're not going to hear about this. This is not going to be a huge news story. The fact that Bernie is leading in the race in individual contributors and has for the entire race that he's been in this race. I mean, these are a piece of information that show you how popular the Bernie Sanders campaign is, how popular he is as a candidate, and how popular his agenda is. So if they begin to report on this more, then in essence, they just continue to give Bernie Sanders more and more popularity with people that don't normally hear the Bernie Sanders message, the cable news viewer. So this is a video you got to share with your friends and family, especially people who maybe are, Trumpers, who wouldn't believe the fact, maybe still won't believe the fact that Bernie is leading Trump in donations from military contributors. But it's a message that should get out there.